Namaste. I'm outside on my deck. We're going to be accompanied by the sounds of nature. Maybe we'll hear some human sounds, maybe some machine sounds. But it's important for me to present this class outside because it's the natural world that gives birth to the physical self. And the physical self is what houses and contains our sensory organs and our consciousness. So it's important to begin with this physical body. Once we become fully embodied and we really understand where we are, what we sense around us, then we begin to have the discernment to choose the path forward. This physical path in yoga is hatha yoga. And because our physical body contains our consciousness, we always have an aspect of the path of Raja Yoga, the path of the mind. Today's practice, though, will be really on connecting with the physical world. It will be a grounding practice, a practice of connection. Once we connect, then we can choose our focus and direct our path forward. Or maybe we direct our path to a pause. That is especially important if we feel at all threatened, if we have any sense of fear. When we have a sense of fear, rather than really working through our senses and our connection to the world, we begin to fall back into patterns, habits that are probably formed from our infancy. Some would say even before our infancy, when we're still in utero, but certainly throughout our childhood. How we react is formed through the habits that are created through life around us. Some of us find that it's more effective to be aggressive. And so when we are fearful, we might act in a way of fighting. We'll clench our fists. We'll probably hunch our shoulders. We'll draw in the gut, contracting the whole front of our body, getting ready for that sense of aggression, or what we would call the fight response to stress. Some of us might have found throughout our childhood that aggression wasn't effective, that it didn't take away the fear. And what was better for us was to fall back, to move away, to retreat. You might even gesture with your hands and lean back with your body, contracting the back of your body, maybe even stepping back. That act of flight, of running from the source of fear or stress. Still others might make themselves small, make themselves so small and react in a way of just freezing, as if they could just disappear from the situation without having to take any action whatsoever. Again, those are formed throughout our childhood. So if we come against fear and we react through those habitual responses, something that helped us in the past to get through our fear, simply telling ourselves or having someone else tell us to just get over it is not going to be effective. What would be most effective, most helpful, is to simply find a way to direct our senses through our physical body into a place of belonging and connecting. Most of our fear is from not belonging. We come into a place and we know we don't belong there. We might retreat from it. Or maybe we come against some people and we get the sense of not belonging to their tribe. And so we become aggressive because maybe we want to belong to that space, but we don't belong to those people. So we want to get the sense of of belonging to where we are, to directing our senses inwardly so that we can respond in a way that actually makes sense to where we are in the present moment, not to where we found maybe some sense of accomplishment in our past. Because what matters is what's here and now before us. So, the first aspect of feeling safe in any space is to feel like you belong there. And that action of feeling belong is directing your senses into your body and orienting yourself to that space. So that's the basis of our practice today. This path of physically grounding ourselves. And through that grounding, immediately we work into the place of how does that feel? What do we think? Are we in the right place? All right? I want to just take a moment and introduce you to your pelvis and to a few aspects of your pelvis I think will be useful for today. The first thing is we're going to come back around to the sacrum here, the back of the pelvis. And in the back of the pelvis, there's this kind of flatness that we're going to start on our back, and we're going to get a feeling of feeling our pelvis on the mat. The second aspect of the pelvis that I'd like you to notice are the sit bones here at the bottom of the pelvis, and the space where the tailbone, the sit bones, and the pubic bones are open. This is the space of the root chakra, Muladhara, and this is the place where we want to connect to the earth ultimately. We want to be able to either let elimination happen through this place. You can see that the pelvis is a kind of funnel, and a funnel is a really great way to direct energy out of our bodies. But we can also draw energy up. A funnel cloud, a tornado, is a way of drawing energy up. And since this is the base of the spine and the base of our central nervous system really coming through our trunk, we want to learn how we can direct energy up from the earth. There's a basic law of physics that every action has a reaction. Part of our physical body is that we are in a gravitational field. We are here on the earth. We belong here, we matter, and we want to get a sense of feeling our connection to the earth, because then, through our senses, we can begin to pull that earth's energy, that telluric energy, up through our bodies and direct ourselves where we want to go on this path of life. The last little part of the pelvis I want to introduce to you are what we call the hip points here a lot of times in yoga. It's the front, the anterior front of the ilia here. So the anterior superior iliac spine, the ASIS. And these hip points will direct us to our hip joints. And eventually we're going to want to find some alignment through our hip joints. So when I talk about the hip points, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so we are going to get practicing here. We're going to have a gentle grounding practice, and we're just going to shift our orientation to gravity and find a way to connect and direct and have energy start to flow through us. So the first element that we want to really connect to is the earth element. Through the earth element, all the other elements begin to manifest. So the 5 elements in yoga, first one is earth, the second is water. And so we've all experienced water out in the world, right? So water is a part of the earth. The third energy is the energy of fire, the element of fire. And of course, I have the sun shining on me, so I'm feeling that warmth of the sun's fire. The fourth element is air. And of course, I'm outside, so the air is fresh, it's full of bird song. And the fifth element is ether. It's the space that contains this earth's energy, that atmosphere that's all around us. So let's start with the earth, because then we can move from the earth through all aspects of the elements and potentially even into a state of transcendence, the spiritual journey that is a part of our path on this plane of being. All right? We're going to start on our backs. I have a couple of blankets handy. You can have some blankets, or maybe you have some rolled up bath towels at home. Just have a couple of props around. I'm on a sticky mat. If you don't have a sticky mat handy, that's fine. We're not going to be doing a lot that we need a sticky mat, so as long as you're not on too slippery of a surface, you should be fine. We're going to start out on our backs, and I invite you to just make your way to your mat. As we lay back, we're going to notice how we feel, and we want as much of our body connected to the earth as possible. A couple of places where we might feel space between the earth and our bodies are the backs of our knees, our lower back, and the back of our neck. So I'm going to place a blanket under my knees, and then I'm going to take another blanket, and I'm going to place that one under my head. And I'm even going to roll up just a little edge of the blanket so the back of my neck is even supported and touching something. As you lay back, adjust yourself so that you're on the flat of your pelvis, on the back of your head. Your chin should be level with your forehead. You're going to let your shoulders fall back. If you need a little blanketing under your shoulders, feel free to do that. If you feel like you need a little more blanket under your knees, take another blanket or rolled up towel. We're going to lay our arms to the side and turn our palms up. We're in a receiving position here, receiving the support of the earth beneath us. Just allow your body to feel heavy, to feel that gravitational pull. Let the back of your body, those muscles of retreat, of flight, let them soften. Feel your skin coming into contact with your mat, not to press down onto it, but just to melt like a stick of butter into your mat. Let the front of your body begin to soften as well. Maybe you can feel your belly soften, the movement of your breath in your lower abdomen. Let your tongue soften, and let your skin just melt from the front of your body into the back of your body. As if, again, you're that stick of butter just melting into your mat. And I have the added benefit of the sun here warming me, so I can feel that sense of melting. So if you're not outdoors and feeling the sun, maybe just imagine. We've all sat out in the sun before and felt that sense of relaxation. And then you can, if your eyes are already closed, that's fine. If you need to orient yourself around and just kind of know where you are in the room or outside, just maybe look around a little bit. You get a sense of where you are in space. And then if you feel comfortable, go ahead and let your eyes close. You know where you are. You don't need to focus outside yourself. Maybe you take a moment, you listen to the bird song, you listen to the sounds around you. And then just like closing your eyes, you're going to direct your hearing inwardly. If you can, close your mouth and just breathe through your nose so you really focus the flow of breath and you feel it through your nostrils. You can also enjoy any scents that are in the air. Our mantra for our practice today is really 3 lines. The first one is, I belong. The second is, I matter. And the third one is, I am here. And so just take the next few moments, maybe saying that out loud to yourself or quietly, inwardly to yourself. I belong, I matter, I am here. Now we're going to begin some gentle movements. Feel free to stay a little longer in your opening meditation. Pause the video. Otherwise, we're going to start to bend our knees and bring the soles of our feet to our mat. And just take a moment. You can wiggle your toes, just wake up your feet, get a feeling of the earth beneath the soles of your feet. And once you have that sense of connection through your feet, maybe you start to feel the weight of your legs. You feel your thighs weighty into your pelvis. You can feel your shins weighty into your heels. And then we're going to take the weight of our legs, and we're just going to let our knees fall to one side. Our feet will flip a little bit. We'll feel our movement to the edges of our feet. You might notice that your pelvis just rocked off the mat on one side. You might feel a little stretch through your waistline. So this is just allowing gravity to kind of carry us into a different position. And that energy moved up our bodies. We're going to bring our knees up, and then we're going to still let them fall to the other side. So again, just heavy legs. Notice the energy moving from your feet, through your knees, into your hips, even up into your waistline, into your ribs. You might notice your breath in the side body. We'll bring our knees up, and we're just going to let our knees just fall side to side. Doesn't take a lot of energy, but it does move energy through us. And then we're going to bring our knees so they're directly up, over our heels, as much as we can over our hips. And now we're going to take some more energetic movements into our bodies. You'll need to get a little more grounded, a little more firm into your feet. So press down just a little bit into your feet. And then we're going to tip the pelvis front to back. So we'll tip the pelvis back first. That means the top of the pelvis will tip back. So you might feel your lower back pressing into the mat a little bit. Your tailbone's going to rise up. It's as if we're kind of scooping up energy through that root chakra and letting it kind of pour into our pelvis. And then we're going to take it the other direction. We'll tip our pelvis so that the tailbone reaches towards the earth, and the top of the pelvis, kind of in the abdomen, reaches up. You might feel your back arch away. So this is as if energy is kind of pouring out from our belly out into the space by our feet. So we're going to just tip into that posterior tilt, pulling the energy in and up into our bellies. And then let the belly kind of stretch, and the energy kind of pours out towards our tailbone into that anterior tilt. So let's just take it back and forth. This is a nice warm-up for the lower back and the hips. We get a sense of moving energy from our feet through our legs into our torso. And it's not passive anymore. We're actually starting to use the telluric energy of the earth and move that energy through our bodies. Then we're going to take our pelvis and we're going to find the flatness of that sacral area on the back. And now, rather than pushing into your feet, finding a sense of groundedness through your pelvis, press into the earth through the back of your pelvis. And as you do so, let your feet float up. Now here's where we're going to have a little bit of fun with our mantras. And I want you to pretend your big toes are pencils. And Da Vinci mastered the aspect of mirror writing, of being able to write in opposite directions and to have the writing be a mirror of itself. And we're going to try that to the best of our ability here, because a couple of things happen. One is we're going to kind of warm up our hips, but the other is we're really going to change the wiring of our brain. We're not just saying these words, we're actually moving through them, and we're going to have to focus a little bit to do this writing. So our brain is really actively engaged in saying these words in all of the ways we can. So big toe pencils are ready, and we're going to stay nice and grounded through our pelvis, and with our big toes we're going to mirror write our mantra. So the first one is I belong. So write I belong. And then bring your knees back together slowly. The second mantra is I matter. So begin to create the letters I, matter, back slowly, crossing those T's. The third mantra is I am here. I am here. And then bringing the legs back and bringing the feet softly back to the earth. Pause. What does it feel like to be here? To have kind of moved through our lower body and to feel the earth supporting you in this position. Now we're going to be changing positions, moving into a seated position. Take your time. Any movements you'd like to do while you're still on your mat, flat on your back, feel free to do them. A lot of people like to just bring their knees into their chest and rock a little bit side to side. Continue to rock until you're ready to sit up. All right, so sitting up, I'll turn position this way. Hopefully the light is good for you to see me. Some challenges to making this video outside. One is the ever-changing light. The other is the sound quality. So I'm hoping that this is working well enough. We're going to bring our feet firmly to the mat, and we're going to just hug our knees. So we're in basically the same position we were just in. You can maybe start to feel the weight of your legs coming into your hips. We're going to start to feel the shift of the weight rather from the back sacral area into those sit bones at the base, at the bottom of the spine. And what we're going to do is just those pelvic tilts again, just rocking the pelvis back, posterior, feeling the weight kind of shifting onto your tailbone or a bit onto your sacrum. And you can let this movement come all the way through your spine and shoulders. And then we'll take it the other direction. We're going to come into that anterior tip, bringing the belly forward, maybe even arching the back. You might draw the shoulders back. And again, we're just going to rock back and forth through these motions. Eventually, we're going to come into seated staff pose, Dandasana. Seated staff pose has our knees straight out in front of us, and we want to be towards the front edge of the sit bones. So notice if that's difficult with your knees bent. If it is, you may want to keep a little bend in your knees. Maybe you'll need a blanket underneath them. So rock forward as far as you can onto your sit bones. Notice how you can start to feel connection with the ground beneath you through your pelvic floor, through that space of the perineum, the space between the tailbone and the pubic symphysis bones. As you find seated staff, again, notice if there's a great deal of tension under your knees, take that rolled up blanket again and place it under your knees. If you find that keeping your pelvis upright in this position, maybe there's some tension in your lower back, it doesn't feel great, or you just still can't come forward onto your sit bones, then we're going to take a second blanket, and I like to fold it so that it's got kind of a thick fold, and I'm going to sit on this blanket, but I don't want to sit on the center of the blanket. I'm going to sit on the blanket and then roll off the edge so I can use that passive force of gravity to tip my pelvis into neutral. Neutral means I'm on those sit bones, kind of towards the front of them just a bit, and I can feel that root space connecting with the earth. I'm just going to turn so I'm facing you here. And again, you can use your blankets, keeping them where you need them. Or if you don't need them, that's fine. And here we're just going to feel that energy coming up our bodies again. We're going to take a nice side bend. So you're going to bring one hand down to the ground and just bring the other arm up alongside your ear as far as you comfortably can. Now, it's really important here that you stay connected, stay kind of plugged in, rooted through your hip as you bend away from it. We're just going to pause here, take a few breaths. Maybe you can feel the stretch, the pull up, maybe even now past your waistline and into your armpit. And then let's bring it the other way, reaching up, stretching, and allowing this willowing over. Soft neck, relax your jaw. Just feel connection and energy rising. And then we're going to bring both arms up. Nice big stretch through both arms. Reach down, stay plugged in, stay connected to the earth. And we're going to repeat our mantra in this position. And this time we're going to write with our hands. We are going to mirror write. And, you know, we have to kind of be able to reach around behind us. So you might bring your arms just a little forward. And our first mantra is, I belong. And then come back forward and up. I matter. And nice stretch, come forward and up. And finally, I am here. Nice big stretch. Come forward, reach up, bring the palms together, and just bring them to your heart center. And just pause here. Again, what does it feel like to be here? If you feel comfortable to close your eyes and kind of withdraw your senses for a moment. Notice what it feels like to be here. And then we're going to change positions again. We're going to shift our orientation to gravity. And we're going to come into tabletop position into all fours. If you need your blankets to feel comfortable, especially under your knees, feel free to place a blanket under your knees. If you have problems with your wrists or hands, you might place a blanket under your hands. We will be doing some warming through our hands and through our feet again in this orientation. So if you need to have some padding right away and you know it, go ahead and grab it. But otherwise, let's see what it feels like to maybe just warm ourselves through this position. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to start to just shift our weight, right? So now we're not just shifting our weight through our knees, but we'll shift our weight through our whole body. And I just encourage you to maybe slide side to side, front to back. Just start to connect with your hands on the mat, with your knees, noticing again, how does it feel to be here? We're starting to be familiar with that sense of connection and orientation to the earth. So rocking around, taking your time. And you might feel the sense of heaviness. Your whole hip structure is now drawing into your knees. And that's sometimes why our knees don't feel comfortable. Our whole shoulder structure is kind of dumping into our wrists. And many times our wrists aren't ready for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to warm up, first of all, through our hands. And just take your hips and just take the weight off your hands a little bit. Hips just move back. And then we're going to spread our fingers and just place our 4 longer fingers down firmly on our mat. You can bring your body back upright. I'm keeping my palms off for right now. And now I'm just shifting my weight passively through my 4 longer fingers. Again, just rocking side to side. But I also want to not just be passive here. I'm pressing. Now that I have this sense of weight in my fingers, I'm also putting energy. I'm pressing down through my fingers. But I'm going to do the same thing with my thumbs. I'm going to press down through my thumbs. And again, I'm just rocking from hand to hand, feeling the weight shift. And then I'm going to balance the weight between my hands and press into all of my fingers. We're going to do a little work with our elbows and shoulders next. So I'm pressing down with all 10 fingers, and I can already feel a little energy coming up through my wrist rather than just being dumped down from the weight of my body. Pushing into my fingers, I can feel energy rising up through my wrists. Then I'm going to bend my elbows. I have 2 elbow positions I think of. One is this one where the elbows point out, and I call that bulldog elbows. And the other one is where the elbows point back at my knees. And I think of a sphinx. So I think of sphinx elbows there. And just kind of maybe rotate your elbows, Sphinx style to Bulldog style. Notice what's happening on your back. When I have my elbows out, it kind of pushes my shoulder blades into my neck, and I can feel my heart kind of dropping a bit. When I pull my elbows back into Sphinx, I can feel my shoulders more on my back body, and there's a little bit of sense of lift through my back body. So I encourage you to try your best to keep your elbows so you can see the creases pointing forward. And if you bend your elbows, they're going to bend into that Sphinx position. Then, now we've established some lightness through our shoulders. Now we're going to get a little bit more lighter through our knees. So the whole weight of our pelvis isn't dumping into our kneecaps. You have a couple of choices here. One is to turn your toes under and to kind of push into your toes. And as you push down, you might feel a little bit of lightness coming into your knees. The other choice is to flatten your feet and push into your shins. You have a little bit better leverage this way, but eventually we will probably be coming up on our toes. So it doesn't really matter. I just want you to find that sense of pressing down through your feet, and you might feel a little lift through your knees and a little bit of lightness in the hips. We're going to take a nice long neutral spine, so you can maybe do a couple of tucks and untucks. A lot of times we call this cat and cow in yoga. And then again, we want to find the space between. Where is the energy balance between the front of our bodies and the back of our bodies? Remembering those two tendencies of aggressiveness, of fighting, or kind of retreating and fleeing. Where are we balanced? Once we find that, connect through the hands, through the elbows, into the shoulders. Connect through the feet and the knees into the hips. Lengthen, balancing energy between the front and the back of the body through the trunk and spine. Now we're going to rock. As we push back with our hands, our hips hinge a little bit. Notice this isn't a pelvic tuck. I'm keeping my spine neutral. And then I'm going to pull myself forward a bit and come into a bit of a extended hip. It's not fully extended, but it's a little bit more extended. So pushing back, hinging, pulling forward, extending. Rocking is really good for our nervous system. And you might find that when you're in a stressful position and you need to find some sense of connection and peace, that you might rock. Or you'll notice when, like, a dog comes out of a stressful situation, they'll kind of shake and tremor a bit. These are just ways our body knows to self-soothe. So I'm just rocking a bit. Now I've got this challenge of having a sense of groundedness through much smaller space. It's not my whole hip and leg structure. It's not my whole back. Now it's just my hands and knees and feet. I'm going to start to maybe create a little bit more energy rising through. So as I push back and I come into that hip hinge, I'm going to let my knees rise up and come into a downward facing dog. As I pull forward, feel free to drop your knees. I'm going to pull myself forward a little bit more and come into a partial plank. Or as I push back and come into downward facing dog, I can pull forward and come into a full plank. And feel that strength coming through the front of my body. And then pushing back, feel the strength coming into the shoulders and the back of my body. We're going to take one more rock. You can choose to have your knees down or up. And then we're going to make our way to standing. So find any way you'd like to come into a standing posture. All right. Take your time coming into standing. Now we're changing our orientation again. We're coming farther and farther away from that connection to the earth, but we have everything we need to stay connected. This is where the root chakra really starts to manifest its name. In Sanskrit, it's Muladhara, so that means the strong root. And so we're going to start to use the strength of our feet, our hips, and our spine to root down and feel the energy coming up. I invite you to just take a moment and just bring your feet about hip width apart. Remember how we find the hips, is we find those front hip points, and just below there, the hip joints, and then our legs align beneath those hip joints. And just like we did on the ground when we were on hands and knees, we're just shifting our weight around. And I just want you to feel the weight shift through your feet, particularly through the heels and the balls of your feet. And then what I'd like you to do is start to just rock back and forth through your feet. So you feel the weight shifting forward into the balls of the feet and then back into the heels. Doesn't have to be a lot. Notice kind of where you're more comfortable. If you're more comfortable back on your heels or more comfortable forward on your feet, again, that's probably just some of that habitual understandings of what works for me, right? But what works best for our bodies to find balance, to seek it, and to sense it, is to bring our weight kind of towards the front edge of our heels, just like we did when we were sitting. We brought it towards the front edge of our sit bones. So it's towards the center of our feet, but still in the heels. So just a little of the front edge of the heels. And just stacking your hips over your heels, your ribs over your hips, your head over your shoulders. Just kind of feel the weight being pushed down through your heels. And then we're going to play with the balls of our feet just a little bit. What I'd like you to just kind of push into the big toe mound and the pinky toe mound. And just kind of feel that pressure. This is more active. This is not passive. This is me creating this side-to-side rocking in my feet. And we're going to just balance that side-to-side energy, pressing into both sides of the balls of the feet. So the pinky toe mound and the pinky toe mound. And then I want you to push a little bit more now into your heels. So strong root down. Start to push past the surface of things, particularly through the heels. And as you do that, you might start to feel the energy rising in your thighs. We're going to continue to kind of pull it up through the spine and just reaching through the crown of the head. So it's a stretch upward through the spine. And we can maybe now start to feel the stretch from our heels to our hips, through our sides, into our armpits, up through our neck, and right out the crown of the head. And then shoulders, finding kind of that position of strength. Again, elbow pits forward, reaching into our fingertips. We're in a strong, grounded, stable standing position, known as mountain pose or Tadasana. Pausing here, say your mantra just silently to yourself. I belong, I matter, I am here. And then from mountain, we're going to soften up just a bit, and we're going to just start to let our weight just kind of passively shift side to side. So throw your weight into one side of your body, and then throw your weight into the other side. And just allow it to shift side to side, like we did the very first time when we were just letting our knees go side to side, but now our whole body is shifting, right? So we can feel our knees shift, our hips shift, and then you can maybe feel the counterbalancing happening in your trunk, how do you V the other way when you shift your weight one way, your head and shoulders kind of shift the opposite way. So your body knows balance. This is something that's ingrained in our hardwiring, but we might have some kind of habitual training that's taken us out of knowing how to balance well. And again, it might be some of our actions that we've taken as a reaction, or maybe it's been because of some injury or just the way we work in our day-to-day lives. So we're going to think through finding balance. Here is me finding balance, but I'm passively finding balance. I'm going to throw my weight in this direction as far as I can. And the first thing I want to notice is what just happened to my feet on the floor. And I don't know if you can see it, but my big toe mound just came up off the floor. I'm also not really on my heel. I'm on the outer blade of my foot. So I'm going to bring my heel more to the earth. I'm going to bring that big toe mound to the earth. And then I'm going to start to draw down, creating a strong root through my heel. So I'm going to start to push down. You can see my body's already starting to right itself. The next thing I want to do is just kind of take note of my pelvic positioning. Now, my personal habit is to have, again, I tend to retreat, so I have a little bit of an upper back extension, and I'm backing up away from this challenge of balancing. So it's not that I'm taking a posterior tilt, but I'm moving towards that just to come out of this little bit of a back bend, this retreat that I'm in. So it's the action of posterior tilting my pelvis, and that just righted my lower back and created some more lift, some more growth through my body. And my other leg is suddenly floating in space. So I rooted down, I drew energy up, and I actually, through this flowing of energy, actually made myself taller on the side. Now, while we're here, we're going to have some fun with our mantra again. If you feel a challenge, you can always put a hand somewhere for support, maybe on the back of a chair or a wall. But we're going to keep this big toe down on our floater leg. So we're not really going to try to balance, but we'll have to shift our focus a little bit into what we're writing. So again, we're rewiring some of the softer aspects of our brain. If you feel that you lose your balance or you tumble a little bit, and you'll for sure see me, what I want you to do is come back to your stability. Come back to your root leg, that heel, the hip, all of the sense of connection that you have to the earth. All right, so with your floater leg, big toe on the ground, right, I belong. And then bring that leg around. I matter. Cross your T's. I am here. This is my mirror side. It's hard. And then bring that leg around. And come back to mountain, to Tadasana. You probably noticed your standing leg was working quite hard to stabilize you, but that stabilization allowed you to have some freedom, some creativity in your other leg. So the action of grounding gives us the availability of options. Energy flows and opens up opportunities in our lives. We're going to shift our weight the second side. So throw your weight just over as far as you can to the leg that was floater now is becoming stabilizer. And again, I threw my weight. I can feel my foot has become less grounded. I'm going to work on finding the front edge of my heel and my big toe mound. Then I'm going to start to particularly press down into my heel. Strong root, right from the hip to the heel. You can see my hip starting to right itself. Noticing my tendency, you might have a tendency to be neutral, or maybe you have a tendency to be in a posterior tuck. We're going to come towards neutral. For me, it's the action towards a tuck. Now I can start to feel the energy coming up through my hip, and I'm going to lengthen up through my spine, and again, my other leg just became a floater leg. As we start our mantra on the side, again, if your brain starts to have a problem being two places at one time, what's most important is that you are present in what connects you, what makes you feel safe and secure, and it's your standing leg. It's where you connect to the earth. So stay present there, and then with your floater big toe, I belong. and sweep it forward. I matter. Cross those T's. I am here. And back around. Come back into Tadasana. And again, pause. What does it feel like to be here? Couple of breaths. All right, so we have found groundedness and stability through our feet into our standing postures. We found some freedom, some options of movements. Now we're going to start to find a little more strength in being here. And we're going to move into Utkatasana, or chair pose. Utkatasana doesn't really translate to chair pose. What it translates is to fierce pose. Once we start to stand our ground, we want to stand in it strongly. And we want to have options here so we can choose our directions. I love this practice of coming into chair pose slowly because it tends to show you kind of how you meet a challenge. So I'm going to turn sideways so you can see me from the hips. Again, my feet are about hip width apart, and I'm balanced in the balls of my feet, and I'm grounding and strengthening through my heels. I'm taking just that little bit of action of just a tiny bit of pelvic tuck here because my tendency is to back away. So I'm just making sure I'm centered, and then extending through my spine. Shoulders strong, and we want to keep strong shoulders here. We're going to take a hip hinge. So remember, a hip hinge is movement from this crease space. My spine is going to stay neutral. So I'm taking a hip hinge. And again, my tendency is to back away from a challenge. And as I hip hinge, my hamstrings are taking the challenge, right? And you can see how I've backed my hips up. It's a cheater's way of getting out of the work. As I bring my legs more vertical, hoo la la, now I start to feel the challenge in my hamstrings. If you can't meet it here, come to where you can. Remember, your shoulders are strong, so trying to stay out of working too hard through your lower back. See if you can find the work in your hamstrings and into the back of your body. We're not going to stay here very long. You're just going to see where is the challenge. How do you meet it? Are your toes gripping into your mat? If so, there's that aggression, that movement into contracting, right? Protecting yourself through aggression. Remember, you can simply protect yourself by coming upwards somewhat. Now we're going to bend our knees. So our hamstrings aren't taking quite so much of a stretching challenge, but we want to keep them strong. We know where they are now. They've certainly talked to us. So it becomes a little bit easier because the contraction is happening through the hamstrings rather than just stretch. But again, we'll tend to either just push our butt back and move our head down, or we might move our weight forward and our knees come way in front of our toes. We want to find balance between the front and the back of the body. We want to find the right challenge in the backs of our knees and in the front of our hips and through our spine. Remember, the shoulders are still strong. And we're going to take our shoulders into this posture. What I want you to do is pretend you're on the floor again. Bring those elbows into that sphinxy position and push yourself into the position as the arms come overhead. Take a couple of breaths here, feeling yourself fiercely strong in this place. I belong here. I matter. I'm going to hold this space because I am here. And then we're going to take a forward fold. This is going to be a little more passive. We're going to let the weight of our upper body just come onto our thighs. Once we're here, let your head become heavy. Let your arms become heavy. And shift your weight back into your heels again. You might find that you've moved towards your toes. Keep your knees as bent as you need to. And then we're just going to start to drive that energy down through our heels. And did you just see my hips started to rise? So as I drove down, that's an action, and I had a reaction. My legs were ready to stretch. If yours aren't, you don't need to stretch. If your hands don't come close to the earth, you can use blocks or a bench, but we want to relax and find just that little bit of groundedness to our heels. Feel the reach up. We're opening up through that root space, bringing that telluric energy from the earth straight up into it. And then also the energy from our upper body, we're returning to the earth. Remember, we grabbed that from the sky as we pushed up. Now we're letting it go. You just take a few breaths here. Nice forward fold. Hands might be, again, on the floor if you can reach it, or on your blocks, or on your bench, or on your blankets. And then we're going to make our way just to a seated position. We're going to end with a meditation. And I want you to be in a really comfortable seated position for your meditation. So I'm going to sit on this little meditation stool, because remember we just said that I belong, I matter, and I'm here. And we want to meet ourselves where we are, not meeting ourselves somewhere else. I am here. And so that means taking in all aspects of yourself. So if you have movement limitations, if you needed to use a stool for that forward fold, that's fine. I'm here. I'm in this place. What's most important for our seated meditation is to have that root, that little space in your perineum touching the earth, because we want to feel connections there. So I'm going to meet myself where I am, and I know that my hips can be a little stiff. And so sitting on the floor isn't completely comfortable to me. If I want to find easy and gentle connection with that root space, you can sit on a chair. I just want you to have the actual sensation of touching the earth through your root. And then just that little bit of rising up, that little bit of flow of energy. Once we connect, we can create direction. Where our focus is, there lies our energy. So if we focus on the root, we have the capacity to draw energy from there. Our meditation is going to include our mantra we've been using, but we're also going to finish with just a simple seed sound. In yoga, each of the chakras have their own seed sound. And the sound is really a movement of connection in our physical self. And that connection manifests in important ways. So, and I love this first bija sound. So bija means seed. And so the first seed sound of the root chakra is the syllable lam, L-A-M. And the reason why I love this one so much is it reminds me of when my children were tiny infants. And they would cry because they were hungry. And we used to call it the la-la cry, because they said la when they were hungry, la. They would touch the tongue to the roof of their mouth and cry, la. And then once they were nursing and being fed, they would they would get that closed mouth humming sound. So lam just reminds me of that infancy, of the first kind of the seeds of language that are manifested naturally within our bodies. Also, the touching of your tongue to the roof of your mouth reminds you that we're touching the earth with the root of our being as well. So we're connecting through the center channel. So open up that center channel as best you can. We're going to turn our palms up again into this receiving way. And what we're going to do with the lam sound is we're going to repeat it 3 times, and we're going to do an echo meditation. We've all been somewhere where you can maybe throw your voice out into a space, and it echoes back to you. But it doesn't just echo back to you, it echoes out into the whole space. And then the echo just kind of continues to fill that space and come back to you through different directions. So when we intone the seed sound lam, we'll intone it out loud 3 times, putting it out into the atmosphere, out into the ether. We'll intone it 3 times silently within ourselves, bringing it into the space of our physical being. And then we'll just wait for the echo. You might feel it in some physical way. You might feel it in some more subtle or esoteric ways. You might not feel it at all. It's okay. There's no way that this is wrong. But just continue to stay in this receiving space for at least several minutes. I'll stay with you for a bit, but then I will end the video, and I encourage you to continue on with your meditation, maybe for a longer time if it feels right for you. And if you'd like to go back to your reclining position where we started, laying on our bolster in that first posture known as Shavasana, if you'd like to come back to that, feel free to. So we're ready for our final meditation. We're connected gently to the earth, like that little first root sense of a seedling coming out and just touching the earth. You know, I'm here, I belong here, I matter, and I'm going to just start to grow. I belong. I matter. I am here. Do whatever you need to be oriented, to feel right here, right now. And feel free to join with me in the out loud repeating of the bija sound. And then we'll move inward. And then we'll move to stillness, listening, feeling, experiencing in all of our senses, a sense of echoing, of energy returning. Love.